To order on this 30th day of November 2023. Please rise and join me for pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Sunday, would you please call the roll?
Yeah, I'm going to say something at the end.
Yes.
That's why.
Supervisor Schneiderman?
I'm here.
Councilwoman McNamara?
Here.
Councilman Martell?
Here.
Councilman Bouvier?
John has an excused absence.
Councilman Scavone?
Present.
Okay.
All right. So 4 out of 5. It's not too bad. And we can conduct our business. All right, so we're going to start with a conversation about the Riverside SDP Sewer District formation. And we're going to be joined by a number of people, including Kathleen Murray, our Deputy Town Attorney, Janice Shearer, our Town Planning and Development Administrator, and Len Marchese, who is our former controller, but on this project is working as a private consultant. And Janice is passing out some maps.
Thank you.
And this is getting exciting because we're inching ever closer here to actually being able to break ground on a sewer district for the Riverside area, which has been a long sought after goal. So, all right, Janice, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, yeah, so we just wanted to update you, and I'm gonna turn it right over to Kathleen to just talk about the procedures, which are really in her wheelhouse about, town law, Article 12C versus 12A, and the direction we're heading in, and then we can just talk about process after that, so thank you.
Thanks, Janice. Good morning, board members. So, if you recall, we were before you several months ago, and during that discussion, we had talked about, obviously the Riverside Sewer project, but we had talked about it in terms of process using Town Law Article 12C, which was a mechanism we hadn't used before, but which allowed us to implement this large-scale capital improvement across all of the town for the benefit of the hamlet of Riverside and the Peconic Estuary, because we had funding problems, and we wanted to be able to fund this in a way that wasn't going to be extremely detrimental to people in the hamlet of Riverside. But since that time, a couple of things have happened that have now allowed us to switch back to Article 12A in terms of procedure, which is the formation of a sewer district as you know it when you form other special improvement districts. So you, on November 14th, you authorized the preparation of a map plan and report in furtherance of that Riverside Sewer District pursuant to Article 12A. And on November 28th, which was just a couple of days ago, you authorized the supervisor to execute an IMA with Suffolk County for the receipt of American Rescue Plan Act funds in an amount up to $5 million, which will be attributed toward this project. But other than the $5 million, Janice has been working together with Len extremely hard with EFC. I'll let her speak more about it, and a potential award that will really help facilitate this project.
Right, so you know that we have listed the project on what's known as the intended use plan. Environmental Facilities Corporation is the lending arm of New York State. And so what we had initially were on this sort of it's an annual plan and like intended plan in the future. So we originally were on the intended plan, and now we're on the short list plan, like where we intend to do this, and that's called the annual plan. And on that annual plan, we worked to get ourselves listed. We went through this process that you've heard me talk about before, this value planning, value engineering, where EFC looked at everything we're doing and gave it to a separate firm to make sure that any money, that it's right sized, we're getting the right components, et cetera. It's a very detailed study, and because we participated in that, and it was new to them too, and it was new for us, we are eligible for hardship financing, which is 0% for 30 years. But of course, that's for borrowing money, and we would rather have grant money. We don't want to really have to borrow it, but we would like to borrow it so that we can sort of pay things and then get reimbursed by grants. So you don't have to encumber your own money. So it's important that we have that piece. So would do this value planning, 30% hardship financing, and then what they did was they rated all the projects on the annual plan. We scored a 77, and they told us that everything above the 50% funding line will receive bipartisan infrastructure law money, bill money. And so we're awaiting that award, so we'll know exactly what we're getting, but we're very hopeful it's a very good amount. So I can't speak to the number yet because we haven't been awarded it yet. But we think that plus that 5 million from the county will take us over the edge of not needing any
Janice?
any 12C, any money
When will we
across
know
the town.
about the EFC money?
What, they told me like imminently, like in the next couple of weeks.
They came back to us with a series of questions, technical in nature, and we're preparing responses for them right now.
And there was a recent resolution showing like, we had to actually ask our, for a little more money to pay our consultants because there was a lot of questions and, back and forth that they didn't initially scope in their work, so we
Janice,
needed that.
to what extent does early local contributions contribute to the application process of these funds?
That was the CPF money, the $6 million that you provided was what was the catalyst for everything. Everyone took us seriously after that point.
Right. Okay.
And we're actually, I think, doing 7, right? We did
Yeah,
6 so far.
Roughly 7, yeah.
We're gonna do 1 more next year.
Oh, I didn't hear that. I only heard the 6. I'm sorry. That's great. And
Yeah.
you
Well,
did
this year
2
we did
initially because
6,
the 2
yeah.
million originally
Mhm.
helped us get the funding for this engineering work. Also that we used that for the match for the other money that we were asking for is 20% match. So you can't ask for it unless you have the match ready. So we
Right.
use that. We have that set aside as our match money. So yeah,
So we're
so
likely to use CPF later on again for
Phase
help-
2.
hookups too. though, in phase one.
hookups, if we
Well,
get
that's it.
enough from EFC, we may be able to use this for the hookup. So that would be even better because it's an existing flow situation and that would be great.
Did they
Could
get the
I ask you to
draft?
back up a little bit
We're gonna need some, Jen.
Okay.
on this and just to describe for the public's edification, the overlay district and the role of Renaissance and what the original plan was and how we are, and where we are now.
So,
Yeah, I know, it's right, it's about 10 years worth of work, but,
As quick as possible, I would say that we set out to do a revitalization plan in Riverside.
mhm,
Renaissance Downtowns worked on that Renaissance Revitalization Action Plan, also known as the RAP. That plan became the basis for the town, who we paid to do all the secret work and all of the work that has happened from the RAP point on was all done by us to get to this point now. And that is that once, no one can actually make an application for the densities and things in that overlay district until there is a sewer. So that is why this is imperative, we have to have this worked out before anything else can come.
so what was the idea at that time for a wastewater treatment facility and district to be put in place? Because the town, we picked this up.
Initially,
after,
they were gonna propose to be like the private operator of the district or something.
It
was a-
initially started out as a private district, but that doesn't make any sense, especially when you need grant money, and it
Mhm.
just makes more sense to be a public district. And so
Right.
we, ever since I became administrator, we've been pursuing the public option, and that's how we've been able to secure almost all the funding we need.
Right, right. So the
it's
goals of
very
the overlay
important that
district
we
weren't being
remain a
fulfilled in the,
public facility.
That
Yeah.
delay,
Right.
they could never get past square one because they couldn't figure out a funding mechanism to get a sewer district.
And
I
this
mean,
is
it was
part
hard
of the
enough for
reason
us
we're
to
doing.
figure it out, let alone a
Which
private
may raise
person.
What
some
we're
legal
doing,
questions
okay.
because, which are probably not right for this venue, but, in terms of what, Renaissance's role moving forward exactly is when they did help with the zoning, but there was other things that they were going to do that they didn't. And there may be some questions about town lands in terms of what, they may have, rights, if any, to acquire land.
Right, so what we did, you'll see this map in front of you is a purple and yellow map.
Mhm.
And what we did was say, let's break it into 2 phases, because there's the phase 1 that we know we can do right now. And that is, let's hook up the existing homeowners, let's hook up the mobile home parks, and then let's use the residual flow for new development. So we know, and then second phase would be, you know, these existing, like sort of, these neighborhoods are not anticipated to change, but it would be nice to hook them up. So but the majority of the people and the higher density mobile homes are all in the yellow. So it's sort of like, that's the higher priority, let's get that done right now. And then the second phase, but the collection system will be there. So it's all just a matter of tapping in, you know, and putting another, they call them trains, treatment trains, and they're modular. So every time you get another 200,000 gallons, you put another treatment train into this. So it would be 4 modules of 200,000 each. That's the idea here, and we're still undergoing all the secra. So on December 12th, you'll have a hearing on the supplemental EIS because we've never actually had the specific location identified until now. So now you've spent many years acquiring parcels, piecing it together, amending the plan. Now we have it, phase 1, phase 2. We know where we're putting it, and now we're doing all the environmental review about that. And the options that we had were given to us by, the scope of it is by EFC, the lending arm, who said, look at these options, look at these things. And so that's exactly what we did. And what we're still doing, you'll see that. The supplemental, you saw that it was just deemed adequate. All that analysis is in there. And then the final other piece is that we will discuss this with the Pine Barrens Commission, because the amount of clearing required is more than is permitted here in this industrial subdivision.
Are they gonna require us to extinguish credits, or?
Well, that remains to be seen. We think we may have
Right, we
a
have to go before the
fairly
commission.
decent public benefit
Just hand.
case here, so I think that we're okay. But
Okay.
we'll
Especially
see.
building the SDP.
Teresa from my office has been working on that application to them, so that.
Taking a lot of individual
And
septic
remember
systems
that we
off
do
of,
have we will have a seat on the commission. It won't be me anymore, but
Right.
it will be Supervisor Moore will sit on that commission, so.
So that's the extent of that, and then, I don't know if, Len, you want to discuss any of the financial
Well,
side?
it's always been envisioned that we make the district affordable to the residents on an O&M basis as well. So it's anticipated that going forward, even though we're hoping for pretty much all the capital costs to be covered by outside financing, not financing, but outside sources, that there'll be an ongoing O&M that the town will probably kick in some money. We're also working with Assemblyman Thiel to figure out ways to amend the CPF law, which will allow the CPF funding stream, the environmental portion of that, to fund this operation. And so he was pretty confident he'll be able to get something like that through. So if we do that, then the need for the town subsidy may go away. So there's a couple of different things that we're working on, and this project, you know, the town has never really done something like this, so there's a lot of different moving parts, and I appreciate all the work that Janice is doing. She's handling a lot here, and, you know, this is a $50+ million overall project, all kinds of grant opportunities, all kinds of environmental. The one page on all the approvals that is necessary goes almost the whole page of all of the approvals that have to take place. So there's a lot of steps that we're trying to coordinate, and I just want everybody to appreciate the
So-
effort here. It is a lot to get this
So I have
through.
some questions.
Absolutely.
One, let me start with the last piece about operations and maintenance of this. And you said that Fred may be amending the CPF law in some way that will allow some of the water quality money to be used for O&M, which would be great. When we were doing the 12C, was it? We were looking at sort of a townwide district. And now we're back to 12B?
A.
12A. And so is there a mechanism, let's say we don't have that, for the town to help subsidize the operation here now that won't be a townwide district? Maybe that's a Kathleen question.
I think so, yeah, I mean, I think we can explore that. It's certainly, if not through the CPF funding, through other mechanisms in the budget.
So when you would form the district, you would probably have a resolution authorizing something to the extent that the O and M gets paid from a budgetary line or
Because
something
it's
along those
wonderful
lines.
that potentially the infrastructure is gonna be paid for with grant money and CPF money, and a lot of the hookups. But the cost of processing that waste could be a burden too. We wanna keep that down to a very
Yeah,
reasonable
the first
number.
phase, we're thinking about $1 million a year, plus or minus, in O and M.
So we
And,
probably need to bring in $500,000 to make it so that we're in that $200 a year
Yeah.
range per household.
yeah,
Um,
and that will go down also, that's the initial projections. But as we bring more people online, especially like some commercial development, that will lower the cost of O and M subsidies from all parties. So, this is the worst-case scenario when we start on day one, but once some development starts and some intensified use start, and they start paying their share and hookup fees, the economics of them contributing will limit the amount of town money.
Right,
So,
which is
because I think the
the
economics
plan.
are super important here, because there's a lot of people with limited means in this area,
Yeah.
which comes back to now the 12A
Right.
and the formation of the sewer district. Do these individuals get to vote on that formation of the sewer district?
To the extent that the board puts it out on its own motion, yes, they would. That's a decision that the town board would have to make in terms of whether or not it's going to.
So it can be done permissively, where the town board just does it?
So the 3 steps is the preparation of your map plan and report. Second step is your public hearing, however long that takes. And third step is the public interest order authorizing the project to move forward, subject to permissive referendum, which then means your residents can, within that district boundary, can either petition the board to put it on mandatory referendum, or you could put it out to mandatory referendum on your own motion for those property owners only. If you remember, there are some distinctions for that kind of vote, for those property owners to weigh in. And then just one note in terms of the affordability, we'll likely need New York State Comptroller approval for the formation of the district, and they are looking exactly at whether or not it's affordable for these residents. I've already been speaking with the attorney at the State Comptroller's office, so she knows that this is something we're working on. If we can show that we have enough grant funding, we might not have to get that approval, but it's something that we have
Well,
to
if
build
the-
into the timeline.
If the construction of the plant and all the mains and all the pumping stations, if all of that is paid for, then the property owners aren't paying any debt service for construction.
Right.
Which is normally a big number. It can be a very big number. All they're paying is the operation and maintenance. But when they're voting, if they're voting to form this district and they're looking at the economic impact, it sounds like it's gonna be zero. It's zero
It's
on their
the
property
goal.
tax.
Yeah.
It's as they use the system, they'll be
Yeah, they'll pay
paying.
user
Right.
fees, but then you lose the need to pump your sanitary system or replace it, so even though you may have to pay $200 or some number for a user fee, it will still be,
My
How
concern
much-
with that, and this is where I think the town will have to do some work, talking with residents and helping them understand it. This is an unusual circumstance where we've been able to, we believe, compile all the money needed for the infrastructure. That was a dream that we never thought we'd realize. So if, let's say, we're not able to cross the finish line here because the group votes against it, we're walking away from over $30 million in money, in grant funding.
Well, I can tell you that at the Franca meetings, the people there are excited about this. They want it done last year. I mean, that's the feedback that
Well, that's
we've
what I
been
was at the
getting
lady
from
asked
anybody who's engaged in the community,
Okay.
so I'm encouraged by that.
It is
The
the
last meeting we
key
went
to
to, the lady asked if
revitalization
we'd done
in
it
this
her
area.
lifetime.
Yes.
It is the key, and there's a lot of property owners that are eager to build according to the RAP, and we're losing opportunities because we don't have it.
Yeah.
You know, the 7-Eleven is, if it's happening, is a classic example that could have been developed according to the RAP plan. But the fate is unknown right now, but.
I haven't done this research. How many of these properties have water mains, do you know,
Legal, oh, you mean that are not on well water?
that are on Suffolk County Water Authority, or the water district in this area.
Most of them are on water, Suffolk County Water. That's how we wait.
Teresa's working that out, but yeah, there's
Okay.
237 parcels.
Okay, good,
that
that's
are,
good. So
That's how
they-
we were able to get
So
full
this
rates.
water bill, and you know how municipalities do this, there's a percentage of the water bill that goes to,
Yes,
you know,
and
so that
the
could be.
engineer has done all that.
Okay.
That's how we formulated the current base case flow,
Mm-hmm,
based on current Suffolk County Water Authority district billing data. We were
Okay.
able to pull maps on,
Yeah.
data on that.
But we are getting that more specific, like making sure there's no wells in proximity. That's another side of seeker analysis, that we're making sure of that. But we don't, at this point, we don't think so. We don't see any private wells. They're all on public water.
It should also be noted at this point that the northern part of this map is the Peconic Estuary. I mean, it borders the headwaters of the Peconic Estuary system, so, that's one of
Yeah, I
the
don't think that
driving
there's much
reasons.
travel time between wastewater and the bay right here.
Yeah, it goes,
That's right. And
pretty
that's why
quickly.
it was so important to acquire many of these parcels. The
Mhm.
county acquired the parcels where we're having the Maritime Park. You acquired the piece next door from D.D. Godhelp, and then we acquired Shumata. So it's a really interesting planning project because there's so much open space. And then the density side kind of balances it out. So it's done a nice job maintaining that northern portion
Right.
as habitat and
No,
open
it's very
space.
exciting, yeah, you guys have done great work on this, it's very hard getting to this point. So now we just have to get over the finish line.
No, we have a pretty detailed timeline set up and tasks and deliverables that have to happen, and
Yes, so the
Yes.
next step is December 12th, there will be a public hearing. Then in January, we'll be having the public hearing on the map plan and
So
report.
it's a public hearing on exactly
The
what?
supplemental EIS for the placement of the system and all the attendance seeker that goes with these, with the value engineering report that required us to look at 3 different options: injection wells, leaching pools, or constructed wetlands, on how to deal with the effluent. So that is all in that secra analysis, and then, the process is to have a public hearing on that supplemental draft. Then it will, we would recommend it stay open, and then you'll have another,
I can speak to that,
go
yeah.
ahead.
So that's the public hearing for the secret purposes, but in terms of district formation purposes, we're hopeful that on December 12th, we could have a notice of hearing for the district formation, with that public hearing being on January 9th, and it would then meet up with that seeker hearing. I say hopeful because we cannot really, I wouldn't recommend finalizing that map planning report until we have the award letter from EFC, because obviously the function of that map planning report is to really identify for everybody how much this will
Mhm.
cost each individual homeowner. And so without that grant money or that grant award,
Right.
we don't
That
want
affects the
to,
numbers
yes.
greatly.
So
Big time.
we're hopeful, that's our potential timeline and the timeline that we'd like to put forth.
On the scheduling, some of the grant monies expire if we don't break ground within a certain amount of time. I think the ARPA money is one of those.
Yes.
So, that's $5 million that we lose if we, what's the, it's.
2026. So
2026.
Yeah, and
And
we
it's
have,
almost
December, so today's
2024.
2023, so it works out
So
actually
there is
perfect.
very much a ticking clock here.
oh, absolutely.
No doubt about it.
and we have to file our claims timely based on which one will expire first. So there'll be a whole claiming process methodology that we'll have to go through.
Right.
And we did provide the county with that timeline for that ARPA IMA, so they're aware of it as well.
Okay.
And we've been sort of trying to make sure, asking, we kind of will probably need a facilitating engineer to help, maintain whoever, and the RFQ went out. So we'll get those qualified individuals back, and then we'll be vetting who we received, and, we'll
Yeah,
go on from there.
The first step is, because even though we use Nelson and Pope to do conceptual plans, these are not really close to a design engineer.
Mhm.
So that's the next step, which would be a much larger contract.
Yeah, the next step is 100% engineering, like all the survey work, the topos, the all the
Does that include
engineering work.
hookups?
All of it, the laterals, everything.
Okay.
Yeah, they're going to figure all
Pump
of that out.
stations, laterals, where the
Yep.
pipes go,
You know,
where
what
the water
happened
mains are.
was, originally, we thought that we were gonna need to acquire
Significant.
a bunch of easements, because of the flow. But then it was decided, in with conversations with some of our engineers, that perhaps this isn't gonna be a totally gravity-fed system, and that would require less in the amount of easements, because you would have some as forced mains, so you won't have to go as deep. So that would, we didn't want to proceed with the easement acquisitions until we kind of knew what we needed. No sense in getting easements that we don't need.
So,
And we can't do that value engineering until that district is actually formed, right? So that's.
There's a lot of like
lot
moving
of-
parts, there's a lot of complicated if then
Does everyone
things
have
that
that
are
at home?
happening.
and you know, in terms of expenditures to date, besides, you know, the engineering that we've been paying for, and CPF has been acquiring land using the water quality monies for, around the sewage treatment plant, and possible areas for constructed wetlands, or, those have all been water quality. So I think we've had several $1 million now spent in CPF water quality related to creating options for this sewage treatment facility. But then I sort of wanted to just quickly go over the numbers in terms of the generosity of others here. So we've got CPF with $6 million so far, and I believe a commitment for another $1 million next year. And then we have Senator Schumer, $5 million grant.
right.
We have County Executive Malone with the $5 million grant. So those together, that's 16 million immediately with another million, so that's 17 million, plus whatever we're getting from EFC,
Yes.
which could be substantial, should get us to the point, hopefully, where the entire phase one is paid for.
That's right.
Correct.
All right, that's remarkable.
We'd also,
It is really good.
we'll also probably, we would have to, part of the EFC process is we're gonna have to pass some bond resolutions to allow for us to borrow short-term from them. So this way the town doesn't have to front the money during construction, because it's gonna be a lot of money, so,
And that's at 0%.
at 0%. So we would
That's great.
kind of basically get a line of credit where we'll pay the vendors as they do
Tell
the
you,
work.
0% in this interest rate environment is really nice.
Yes,
Free money.
we'll have
You're gonna save
0%.
a lot of money, because you're talking about potentially borrowing tens of millions,
Yeah,
over 10 million,
Yeah.
at 0%.
Yeah, even if we didn't have to pay it in the long term, during the construction, you'd have to lay it out, because the way the grants work is you spend the money, then you have to wait to get it back. So, yeah, we would be looking at $10 million, and if the town's making, 4 or 5% on its money, yeah, you wouldn't want to do that.
You wouldn't want to do that.
You wouldn't want to
It
do
would
that.
not be a good financial decision.
It's actually this lot right here.
so normally we come asking for money here,
I
we're
would
coming
expect
to tell you
no
we
less.
got lots of money, hopefully.
Yeah, I just want to
Advice
reiterate,
from our former controller.
but just to reiterate really quick, for the amount of hours that Len and I have put into this project, Janice has probably put in 5 times that.
Thank you.
So I really,
I appreciate that.
it's worth,
Going back years.
unbelievable the amount of time and energy.
It's not just time, this is so complex. I've been involved with a number of these that, often don't get to the finish line. We're very close here.
We're very close, it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
There's a will, there's a way. Everybody's been so positive, this board has been amazing.
And the community.
And the
thank you.
community.
The
The
community
community
has been
wants this.
amazing.
Very supportive.
Very supportive.
You know,
And
these-
so with
these
that
things are
kind of
just-
support and that level of like,
Thank you for
you're
saying that,
not
'cause-
fighting an uphill battle, it's sort of like everybody's lifting it up. So it's happening, and that's nice.
Very few towns develop new sewage treatment plants. This is a rare thing. Brookhaven's got it too, but it was really developer related. For us to do this is very unique. Was there any, I know there was discussions with the county about taking over the operations. We've talked about that a couple times over the years. Is that something that's still?
That will be at the will of the board,
Yeah.
right? That you can have, the town owns the property, the district will,
We can contract under
Be
town law Article
contracted
12A,
it,
you can
yeah.
have you can contract with
Yeah.
the county to provide that, to run the district, so to
Operations
speak,
and
yes.
stuff, yeah, just-
or you could
exactly.
even have a private operator
If
for
that would go-
operating it.
Right
It
now,
doesn't have to be.
the private options are much less expensive.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
So
I was
you-
just saying.
Anytime the county gets involved,
Yeah, right,
we
they
can
don't do
add
it,
zeros on the end of everything.
Right, I just wondering, yeah, cost-wise, would that be good or not?
And with the new technology, the manpower needed is minimal.
It's basically an unmanned plant.
Right.
Right, it has a lot of digital,
Well, it gets visited once a week.
It's very
Four,
savvy.
no, 4 hours a day.
4 hours a day gets
There
visited?
needs to be an operator there 4 hours a day.
All right, so we have
Okay.
reached 11 o'clock, which is what we had slated for this conversation. So thank you
Thank you.
all. Excellent. We'll look forward to those hearings, resolutions.
Yep,
All right?
great.
Thank you guys, good work, Janice.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you all.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you to my colleagues especially. Without them, this wouldn't be possible. I'm
So-
still here for the next one.
So Janice, yeah, you don't have to move. You
I can hand these
stay
out.
right here.
And then Charles just has to bring in Emery and Shelby and.
All right, so our next topic of conversation is the Climate Action Plan. Some people have been calling it CAP, the acronym. But the Climate Action Plan, and this is something that's been quite a long time in the works. And we're gonna bring in Ramble by Zoom. Welcome, and we have Janice Shearer, our Town Planning and Development Administrator. So
Yeah, I'll just.
yes, let's start from, I guess, how we got here and what's in the plan.
Sure, I, just briefly, and then I'll turn it over to our consultants, but this all began with a grant, a Clean Energy Community Program grant for the preparation of a climate action plan. That happened in 2022, where we were awarded, as you remember, Mike was always getting us to be clean energy community, climate smart community, points, bronze, silver, all that. That was part of this, and so in this preparation of this plan, Ramble was going to do, our greenhouse gas emissions, look at the sort of what the reductions could be, quantifiable carbon reduction, a relational cost, timeframes, benefits, etc. So we awarded that contract to Ramble. Ramble is a global architecture, engineering, and consulting company, and they were founded in Denmark. They operate across 35 countries with 18,000 employees, 2,000 experts in environment and health, water, energy, architecture, landscape architecture, and management consulting. And so we have Emery, Lee, and Shelby here on Zoom. They're from Ramble, and they've been working very hard on this plan.
Before you turn it over though to them, I mean,
Sure.
we're a coastal community.
Mm-hmm.
So we have issues of erosion, sea level rise, and, the effects of global warming on our, aquatic life, and, it's a lot of factors. So I just, if you could just sort of address the why. Like, why should we even have a climate action plan? Why is this important? Why are we bothering to do this?
That's a great question. Yeah, I mean, if you're paying attention, you have to understand that climate change is real and that it's happening, and we're seeing that with increased storm surge, more intense storms, things that are, it's not just that, we've always had storms, we know but the intensity, the superstorm Sandys are more likely than not to happen. And, there's a lot when it comes to just planetary health, when you start really looking into the research and the reasons why. It's the plants, the animals, the polar ice caps, the sea level rise, the storms. We're a coastal community. There's many, many reasons to say what is causing this, and it's greenhouse gas. And you remember that this greenhouse gases get trapped from the atmosphere and the cause of global warming. We're
Well,
trying to
But
move.
why us then? Why not let everybody else take care of it? Why should we respond?
Well, we've been a leader, and we've always said we were going to join in, back in the day when, we started the Sustainability Committee, we started Mayor's Climate Protection Agreements. There was a lot of places that said, we can't leave it to someone else. We're going to make these commitments. And so this town board and others before you have made those commitments and said, we're gonna lower our carbon emissions by a certain date. We're gonna move toward net zero, or meaning that we're accounting for as much as we're putting out, we're accounting for it, right? So we're not releasing all these carbon emissions.
So
And Janice, if I
aligns the
could-
town's planning with its goals, with its adopted goals. Yeah, I'm sorry, Tony.
So just to interject here, you know, part of our system in the United States is significant local control over some of these decisions. We're not necessarily a top-down government. You know, we believe in local decisions and local leadership, and that is in part what we're doing here. You know, when 100-year storms come every 12 years, you know, that's a significant change. So, but that's important, I believe, in a municipal governance sense, that, you know, people know that the localities, towns, and counties are significant players in climate decisions.
I mean, just this past summer was the hottest, you know, there's these hot summers, and like you're dealing with like a lot of changing climate changes to our way of life are at
I mean, I
risk.
think there's people who may differ, but to me, this is an existential crisis for the planet. And that
Yes.
everybody has to do their part. Or, you know, there won't be future generations. You know, this is probably the biggest crises that the planet has faced in maybe ever, you know. So, as a civilization. So this is like, you know, it's not fair to just say everybody else should do their part. We have to do our part. And the town has over and over said, we are not gonna abandon our responsibility. We're gonna be a part of that change, or as you say, a leader in that change. That we might be, even before some other communities.
Absolutely, and we have to, you know, recognize that it's real. There are effects that, you know, maybe it seems hopeless to some people, why bother? But everything helps. Everybody who believes they can make a difference can make a difference. So it does matter. It is important. It's not something to push off into the
Right.
future. It's something to respond to now. And the purpose of this plan was to say, we don't want to respond to the you know, latest article in the New York Times or the thing du jour. We need like a comprehensive strategy, and we'll all agree on what those strategies are, and then work toward achieving them. So it's not the end, it's the beginning. It's not like this is it, this is the only thing we can ever do now. This makes sense because it provides a framework to operate within, so that it's not coming from all over the place. It's like we can just look at it and methodically tick things off and work toward those things that are going to have a measurable impact. And also we put out, just quickly, we put out that CAP survey. Almost 400 people in the town responded to that survey. We sent it via email to over 16,000 emails that we had on our email addresses, over 9,000 people. Opened the email, looked at it, you know, we can see those metrics, so.
I know there's some people who say, well, that's, you know, just a small percentage of the community, but you have national polling where you have 400 respondents, and that is indicative of the larger population. So it's not necessarily everybody responding, but it is a sample size that is statistically meaningful. And I think that people have to understand that when you're doing polling, that if you want to get a sense of the community, a 400-person sample size is a decent pool in terms of margin of error.
Do you want to dissect the survey now or wait?
You could wait. I would like to introduce Ramble and go through it and just make the earlier point, the bigger point that this is a strategy. It's a strategy plan, a strategic plan. It's a comprehensive plan, and we invite the feedback. We want to hear the feedback. That's the point of the public hearing and all of moving forward.
So to be clear, the public hearing we're having is on the draft plan.
Yes,
So we're not adopting anything. We're having a public hearing on the draft
on the
plan.
12th, yeah.
And that public hearing will then, the input from that and this and the planning commission and the planning board will all be put into a revised plan?
Sure.
And then we'll then have another workshop and public hearing and then adopt it?
That's up to you if you want to do that. The board, it's at the board's pleasure. If it resulted in minimal changes, then it results in minimal changes. If it was like, you know, a huge undertaking to make a lot of significant changes, then it would go further on. You know, it's really at what comes out of the hearing, the comments, and what they mean for the actual strategies that are important, you know, in here. If you know, you want to eliminate a strategy, say, I just opened the book and we don't want strategy 11. Well, that's just striking out strategy 11. You know, that's easy. If you're like, we need 25 more different strategies under this sector,
No, but like when
then
you,
that's
when you
different.
start removing strategies, you start decreasing the percentages and the numbers, and they all change and shift, and
Right,
so
and
then it
so
all
that's why
has
it's
to be.
important to understand where the numbers came from and the strategies themselves, and that's really why Ramble's
What
here.
Janice is saying is, if it changes radically, then yeah, you'd have to probably do another public hearing. If you're just making some minor adjustments to it without adding new things that weren't part of the original plan, you could adopt it without probably additional hearings. All right.
So I'd like to introduce Anne-Marie and Shelby. Hi, welcome.
Hi, can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Great, okay. One thing I just want to mention, Janice, I think we're also supposed to have Melody Redburn in,
Oh, I'm sorry.
in the Zoom. For some reason, I don't think she was able to be promoted as a panelist.
Let me just,
But yeah, she'll be joining once she receives that invite. There she is. Okay, great.
excuse me.
Thank you. And then I believe we do have a presentation. Is that loaded on your side?
You can
you
share
can
it
do
from
it.
yours. You can share it from Shelby, can you
We'll
share
share
it?
it. Okay, we'll share it. Great, okay. Terrific. So we'll pull up those slides.
And that's this. This, you have a carbon.
Okay. Is this gonna tell us a bit about Ramble or just the plan?
No, this is about the plan.
Just 1 minute. Okay, everyone see my screen all right?
Yep, we can see it now.
Excellent, great. Great. Thanks, everyone. So yeah, good morning, and thank you all again for having us join your work session. As Janice mentioned, my name's Emery Lee, and I work for Ramble. I'm here with my colleague Shelby Smith and Melody Redburn. And Shelby, if you can just jump to the next slide. Just a brief agenda for today's discussion. In this slide deck, we'll run through just a quick introduction of our team, our project process, or how we kind of developed the climate action plan, and then the technical presentation. So we'll run through, how we developed the greenhouse gas emissions inventory, and then the supporting actions for emissions reduction strategies, as well as forecasted future emissions. And then at the end, we want to make sure there's time for Q&A. Yeah, let's just jump into the team introduction slide quickly. Again, I think you all heard who we are. I can give just a quick 60-second background on who I am, and I'll let Melody and Shelby each do the same. So I am a senior planner at Ramble. I've been working in sort of the New York metropolitan area for the last 15 years, and my specialty is in environmental and sustainability planning at sort of the community level all the way to sort of the regional level. So yeah, very passionate about a lot of the things that Janice mentioned, and that those of you who are just discussing the need for a climate action plan, very passionate about all of that. And yeah, I'll let Melody say a few words just about her background as well.
Great, thanks Emery. Melody Redburn. I'm a managing consultant in our transformational sustainability service line. I focus primarily on decarbonization projects, both at the public sector, local government, up to state level, and also with corporate entities. My specialty is in greenhouse gas accounting and developing decarbonization roadmaps or climate action plans for our clients. So looking forward to the discussion today.
Hi all, nice to meet you. My name is Shelby Smith, also a senior planner with Ramble, sitting in the New York City office. I have an expertise in water resilience and sustainable design at both the building and site level. Great, thanks Shelby. Okay, let's jump into project process. So walking you through just a little bit about how we approached the project. As it was mentioned, this was kind of a long time coming. We had begun work on this sort of, I guess, to support and complement the work that was done on Southampton 400 plus, the sustainability element for the comprehensive plan. And, I think there was a vision for this to be, again, kind of a roadmap for the town, a planning document that could help the town chart a course toward, renewable energy and carbon reduction goals. And it does sort of align with the state's broader goals under the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, the CLCPA. We did develop an inventory, both a municipal GHG emissions inventory and a community emissions inventory, and we developed emission scenarios, reduction strategies, and actions that could be taken by the town if and when they're ready, or the town is ready to reduce emissions. And then, we have done a bit of the supporting public engagement work with the town, including a public meeting earlier this year and a community survey. Been working with Janice on that quite a bit. And then, actually developing the report and the draft that you have there in your hands. Next slide, please. Here's just a graphic of the timeline for this work. And here we are today in November 2023 at the town board working session. You can see some of the different components of the climate action plan. There was a carbon sequestration and offset analysis, and then also a sort of economic and financial impacts assessment. We're hopeful that you all will find the material in the plan to be, understandable, digestible. We understand you may have some questions, but ideally, there's a lot of good substantive work there, and, we're happy to make any adjustments after, the hearing in December. Just wanted to show this graphically, because some folks are more visual. Okay, next slide, please. So I will allow Melody to continue from here on the technical presentation portion.
Great, thanks. So first, just at a high level, wanted to talk through how the process that we follow to build up the strategies and the emission reduction impacts to show that progress towards carbon neutral. We recognize that Southampton established a goal for that carbon neutrality, and so that was kind of our guiding end goal as we were looking at the process here. So first, we start with developing the greenhouse gas emissions inventory in order to get a baseline and understand where the town is starting from. Then we also forecast the emissions into the future to understand how things like population growth, the electric grid, things like that will impact the town's greenhouse gas emissions over time. That way we know how much effort needs to be taken in order to achieve that carbon neutral goal. Then we establish climate action priorities. So this is really kind of groupings of the different emissions and their sources. I'll talk a little bit more about these in a few slides. The next step is to brainstorm and develop the reduction strategies and actions. This step was a pretty collaborative effort where we were pulling ideas from the Southampton 400 initiatives, as well as other city and state best practices and success stories, case studies that have worked well in other cities, as well as leaning on our technical experts within Ramble for some of those strategies. The final step is to essentially develop a greenhouse gas emissions model to show those reduction impacts over time. With this, we also assign kind of specific actions in order to start to achieve, make progress on those strategies and steps, as well as do kind of the cost and financial high-level cost-benefit analysis with that to gain an understanding of the effort and feasibility it will take to implement those. Next slide, please. So here we are showing the two greenhouse gas emissions inventories. On the left, you will see the community-wide emissions for 2019. 2019 was selected as the base year, based on data availability and also avoiding the impacts of COVID-19 that were very atypical. We didn't want to establish a base year based off of an atypical year, which is we've seen very commonly across all kinds of municipalities. So 2019 is a very common year to start that measurement from. You can see in the pie chart for the community-wide emissions, the bulk or majority of those emissions are coming from residential energy. So this is electricity, natural gas, propane, any kind of heating fuel, and electricity, I mentioned that. The next wedge is from transportation. So this is obviously all the cars and trucks and vehicles that are on the roads in Southampton. That's followed by commercial energy. So again, electricity, natural gas, propane, etc. In commercial buildings, and finally followed by waste. The metric we kind of look at to see how Southampton compares to other communities is the metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per capita, so per person, and that's at 13.6. And this is very similar to other Long Island communities and New York area communities that we looked at. So nothing out of the ordinary here that is kind of cause for concern or cause for special focus on those emissions. It's very, very typical that we see with other towns. On the right-hand side, this inventory looks at the town operations, so any of your specific buildings and vehicles and equipment. You can see here the vehicles and equipment make up the bulk of those emissions, which is a bit different than the community-wide inventory. That's primarily just because of the fuel use that goes into all of those vehicles that are needed to support town operations. The next wedge there is buildings, so this is all building energy use. We kind of group those a bit differently than we do on the community side, just because they are a smaller portion, so it makes sense to speak to them as a whole. So again, electricity and heating fuels for that building energy. And then finally, streetlights actually make up a not insignificant portion of those emissions. So that's from the electricity that is required to operate those streetlights.
Do you know, can I just ask a question? Because 2019 was right around the time we were converting all the streetlights to LEDs. So is that 7% pre-conversion or is that after?
I believe it's pre-conversion. If those were in progress in 2019, they would not have been reflected in the electricity data yet. But if we were to say update your inventory for 2022, 2023, we would likely see those impacts.
I think we did it before 2019.
Oh, I got here in 2016, we didn't do it immediately.
You did it before 2019.
We did it before 2020, that's for sure.
May have
Definitely
been,
did before
it may not be fully reflected though. It took a while to do it. Frank, do you remember what year that was?
I don't know.
Huh, I'm just curious. And in terms of the, the metric tons of carbon per capita, are you using a summer population, year-round population? Is these are yearly figures?
Yeah, it's a yearly figure, so we look at it's the annual
It's annual.
population.
Okay, so you're looking at like LIPA, energy usage and things like that year-round?
Yes.
Okay, and for the waste numbers, because we're only processing maybe 10 to 15% of the waste through our facilities, most of it's through private carters, but you're just basing it
Right.
on population, right?
Yeah, so that's based on population and then what gets sent to the landfills, even if those landfills are kind of outside of your boundary. And I believe, I would have to double check to be sure, but I believe those are based solely off of population. So I think we assume something like 7 pounds a day per person, roughly, based on kind of national averages.
Okay,
Because the data, specific data is very challenging to get because as you mentioned, many of the waste haulers are kind of independent contractors or independent companies, and so gathering that data is very challenging. So we use kind of proxy data to estimate
It's
that.
just sometimes it's tricky in a seasonal community like ours, where if you say it's 7 pounds per person and then you use the census population of whatever that is, 69,000. In the summertime, our population's, three times that, so. I don't know how to calculate those kinds of things, so. But if you're doing some sort of weighted average based on summer and year-round, that's fine.
Yeah, Shelby, or Emery, do you recall the population data?
Not a fan, we might have used census, but we can kind of take a closer look at that and circle back.
Most of the things in the plan mention census data,
Yeah, I would
Which-
assume we use census, because
wouldn't be our summer
the
population.
visitor numbers, fluctuate, and we try to use kind of the most concrete data available.
Okay.
But it's a great point, so we'll circle back on that as well.
Yeah, would just potentially make our numbers worse.
Right.
So, all right.
All right, if there's no other questions, we'll keep moving.
All right, thank you.
Great. All right, so this next step, and the chart shown here is the greenhouse gas emissions forecasting through 2040. We use what we refer to as a business as usual scenario, which assumes that no climate actions are being taken. So the only impacts that are shown in this graph are what's considered to be happening kind of outside of town control. So grid decarbonization, so basically anything that LIPA is doing in order to reduce the emissions of the electricity that they provide is included and reflected here. However, things like electric vehicle adoption or building more efficient buildings, none of that is included in this chart. And the goal with developing this chart is basically to see where the emissions are going over time, so then we know what the emissions reductions need to reduce in 2040. We do consider population growth within this, have it partially based on, as you mentioned, the seasonality, just recognizing that there is a need to kind of level that out. But we include population growth of about 0.3% per year. And of course, energy, transportation, and waste will all scale with that population. As the trend goes down, so changing from 2019 with 790,000 metric tons of carbon, in 2040 we see that's about estimated at 517,000. This is largely due to the decarbonization efforts and the goals of LIPA. And so that has more impact than the population growth at kind of based on our assumptions that are included in that forecast.
Can I ask you, so as I read that, as you go from left to right, if that layer isn't getting smaller as you go to the right, then it's really not changing in this case. So transportation and waste is pretty much the same thickness across, but commercial buildings and residential, as you're saying, are going down in terms of how much carbon they're emitting because of the electricity changes at LIPA, et cetera, more use of renewables. But why isn't transportation going down if more people are going to electric cars? I don't understand.
Because great question, and that's a good observation. With the changes in those wedges, we do not have that included in this chart. We consider that to be one of the strategies that we model to show those reductions over time. So in a couple of slides, I'll show what it looks like in 2040, considering that electric vehicle adoption.
Okay.
But so this doesn't include any state or federal mandates in the business as usual calculation?
Not beyond the electric utilities, no.
I know it's a small percentage, the percentage of greenhouse gases from garbage. But is your number, is that just the general decomposition of the waste, or is that the transportation of the waste out of the area? What is leading to your number for waste?
I might have to get back to you on that. It depends on the emissions factor that's used for the municipal solid waste. I believe it is just the decomposition of that. However, I can check to see if it's considering a full life cycle of that.
Because there's no, I mean, there's some recycling going on, but the bulk of the waste stream is being trucked out of the community. Half of it is going to landfills in other states,
Which would be in
and
transportation.
half of it's being incinerated. So I don't know if it even shows up in our number, because it's our waste that isn't, staying in the community to decompose. We don't landfill anymore. So that's, we have yard waste and things like that, and that we do compost here. I mean, that is a producer of methane for certain, but I don't know how that number's arrived at, but.
Yeah, I can say that it depends heavily on how the boundary is considered. So because you don't have any landfill operations within your boundary or within your town, and that does leave, it basically, those emissions of the incineration and what's occurring with the waste you send there is attributed to wherever the landfill sits, basically.
Okay. It's still it's our waste, but it's not showing up in our numbers.
Yeah, and that's just because of the guidance for calculating greenhouse gas emissions.
So,
It just dictates how those boundaries
So
are
on that
drawn,
point,
and it in some ways simplifies it, but it can kind of discount certain portions of
right,
that waste. But it's,
on that point, because, I've thought this has been a neglected environmental issue. The transportation of the amount of waste, that type of distance, largely, by diesel fuel, the amount of greenhouse gases is enormous to move a mountain of trash out of state. In that I just, down the road, if we can come up with, more recycling, more reuse of materials, and even the transportation by rail would be significant. And there's been some efforts to try to build a facility on Long Island, like a depolymerization type of facility that could, waste to energy in a closed loop system that could also help with, dealing with that issue. But it's not reflected in your numbers, but it is real, and it's a lot of pollution from the way we handle waste is a disgrace environmentally.
I was looking while we were chatting, the transportation of that waste would be included in the transportation wedge.
Yeah, because it's the same as it's always been,
Yeah,
It's not getting worse. Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. Right, we'll go to the next slide. All right, so following the development of the inventories and the forecasts, we looked at major priority areas. So these are really tied to the major sources of emissions, but also additional action areas that will significantly contribute to emissions reductions. So, and then within each of those, we identified specific strategies. So I won't go into these in great detail. I'll touch briefly on the priority areas you see across the top. So buildings, we've talked quite a lot about just the energy use associated with those is obviously a big component of Southampton's greenhouse gas emissions. So one of the priority areas obviously is reducing the energy in those buildings. But then we see clean energy as recognizing that that's necessary in order to reduce emissions associated with all energy use. Transportation is obviously also a significant portion of that. So the actions within this focus on transitioning to electric or other alternative fuels, and then for the community, incentivizing sustainable transportation, whether that's electric vehicles or additional alternative options, biking, car share, essentially anything that would reduce the use of cars or transition those cars to cleaner fuels. The next area is sustainable design and land use planning, and this is included because that also significantly influences both how people move, but also the building types and spacing and everything that can be added to the town. Codes and policies can also have a significant influence on clean energy development, energy efficiency, transportation. There's kind of a wide range of influences there. Materials and waste, we just talked quite a lot about there, enhancing waste reduction programs and identifying more circular solutions, so ways to both reduce that waste but also reuse any waste that is generated. The next priority area is carbon sequestration and removal. We recognize that the strategies identified don't address 100% of those emissions, and in order to achieve carbon neutrality, there will be required sequestration and carbon removal of those emissions. This is true kind of across any municipality, town, company that we would look at. And finally, capacity building. So while there are not direct emissions reductions kind of tied to capacity building, we acknowledge and just want to point out that it does take a lot of effort to kind of lift up and make these programs successful. And so we want to make sure that capacity building gets considered within the climate action plan. Next slide, please. Great. So then our next step, once we identified the various actions, was to determine the associated greenhouse gas emissions impacts with those. So whether it was direct reductions or kind of changing the way that those emissions are used. So for instance, if we're reducing diesel or gasoline use, but then also switching to electric vehicles, that shows up in these modeled impacts. So you can see here, starting at the left side of the graph, we have the 2019 baseline emissions in that gray bar. As we move right, we can see the impacts of each of those priority areas. We're showing on the yellow bar the expected grid decarbonization impacts from the transition to renewable energy by the electric utility. And then each action, or each priority area, is modeled there based on the actions identified. So buildings is expected to reduce quite a lot, and just moving through each of those priority areas that we reviewed. And then finally, on the far right-hand side, we do see that based on these reductions and the level of effort that we aligned around for those reductions, there are still some remaining emissions that are expected in 2040 that will need to be addressed. There are expected, just due to market changes and policy changes, both at the local, state, federal level, and also as technology evolves. We recognize that by 2040, there's going to be a lot of additional changes that will influence a lot of these strategies that are difficult to kind of crystal ball gaze, I would say, in order to model them. We do incorporate some of those assumptions, however, know that there are a lot of changes. So some of those remaining emissions will be addressed through things like technology advancement, advocacy by the town to either the state level or beyond. And then some additional policy changes kind of across the slate of possible policy options and incentives. Emery or Shelby, I'll be open to ideas here. We can go through some of the examples of these town actions, but also want to recognize our time. We've got just a little over 15 minutes left, so this might be a good point to pause for questions.
Any
Agreed.
questions?
Yeah, we want to make sure that, those of you who haven't had a chance to ask questions yet, we can take a breather here, open the floor to you, and then, you know, if you're interested, we can walk you through some examples of the supporting actions, for each of the emissions reduction strategies.
Anybody? Questions? No?
You have your questions?
I'm good, I just wanna get to the town actions first.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, why don't we run through these, Melody, just quickly?
Sure. All right, so these are specific to town facilities. We do have additional kind of supporting community actions, but some of them are very similar. So the town actions will give kind of a overview and flavor of what some of those might look like. So first here we see the buildings priority area. These are heavily focused on energy efficiency and tracking energy use. We recognize that energy efficiency has a significant impact on emissions, both because it uses obviously less energy, but then that also means needing less added generation. You can use clean energy sources to power those. So we have strategies here both for the existing buildings and then also for any new facilities that are built, including very efficient systems there. The last one considers tracking and reduction of those facilities. I think we've all heard 100 times that what you don't measure, you can't manage. And so this really focuses on getting a good understanding of what energy use and where that energy is coming from within town facilities. The next priority area is focused on clean energy. So this looks at increasing renewable energy generation and infrastructure for the facilities. So this would include looking at things like solar panels or geothermal systems, and also collaboration with the utilities to upgrade and add, devices in order to implement some of those clean energy solutions. We also have a strategy related to microgrids to help address reliability and looking at peak power supply there. The next strategy is related to transportation. As we saw in the town greenhouse gas inventory, this was the largest component of the town operations emissions, and so this really focuses heavily on transitioning that fleet to electric or alternative fuels. Alternative fuels could consider things like biodiesel, renewable diesel, fuel cell vehicles. There's an increasing number of options, particularly as some of the federal IRA dollars get distributed across the country. It also looks at some kind of, what am I trying to say, like policy type functions or process changes within the town. So looking at a green purchasing policy for fleet vehicles to replace those, and some of that could look at kind of changes to how that financial analysis is done, because there's benefits to, say, looking at total cost of ownership rather than straight capital expense, for example, and there's benefits to that for EVs. And then also looking at expanding kind of green zone practices across all the town-owned properties. The next priority area is sustainable design and land use planning. I touched on this briefly earlier, but there's just through that planning ways to address emissions reductions. So transit-oriented and mixed-use development. This is really focused on kind of changing the way transportation works and building more kind of compact areas that promote more walkability or pedestrian-friendly areas. The next strategy focuses on changing codes and policies to promote clean energy development. This is really kind of an enabling strategy to build on the clean energy action we touched on earlier. This strategy, materials and waste, looks at enhancing waste reduction programs and circular solutions. So establishing a composting program to also consider food waste. I know we touched on yard waste earlier, but food waste tends to be a significant component of that waste that gets sent to the landfill, and has alternative solutions that can be done with that. Also looking at kind of promoting composting for residents or even commercial entities through that, and then launching zero waste office practices. So really promoting that kind of zero waste culture within the town operations.
Look at this one.
This priority area is again the carbon sequestration and removal. One of the first steps here is really to get to a good quantification of the natural resources, and then from there focus on preserving and expanding those. So this can look at things like sponsoring reforestation and tree planting in areas that would benefit from that reforestation. There's some added kind of co-benefits with some of this, particularly related to flooding, urban heat island effects, some of those things that we see already as impacts from a changing climate. These natural resource type activities can help reduce some of those impacts. I think that's important to recognize, that there's a lot of kind of co-benefits with some of these strategies. The next item is exploring emergent carbon sequestration and approaches. Planting programs to look at non-invasive and pollinator-friendly. Also looking at what's called blue carbon or aquatic sequestration. So really leveraging a lot of the water and ways to do add plant life and other carbon sinks to that. So kelp farming is an example of that.
What is super sink? What are they?
Reforestation.
Sorry, Emery, can you touch on that, the super sink?
Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Great. Yeah, so Super Sync is just a specific type of tree planting program. So it has to do with the density of the tree plantings and sort of the specific methods of planting to maximize, that vegetation's capacity to sequester carbon. And then it will be done in targeted sort of dedicated areas to sort of maximize again the density of the carbon sequestration.
And in that, you include non-invasive species that are pollinator friendly. One of the issues we have in the town is significant amounts of invasive species are taking over cleared land, Russian autumn olive, that kind of thing. But do they not sequester carbon?
They do, but there would be, the idea with the Super Sync program is that there's a methodology and a sort of rhyme and reason, I guess, if you will, to the planting program. And I think the idea of, including non-invasive and pollinator-friendly species is also just to sort of account for the overall health of the ecological system and sort of the biodiversity factors. So it's something that I think is just always considered a best practice when considering, things like a Super Sync or reforestation program. It's just to consider sort of the ecological benefits to the sort of local ecological profile.
Right, so if we were actively replacing a forest, of course we would plant invasive species, but it is an issue.
Right,
Just wanted to-
absolutely. An important one to just consider and keep in mind.
And a difficult one.
Yes.
Continue, please.
All right, the last action, again, is focused on that capacity building. So this would be both staffing, looking at a sustainability coordinator position to really focus on launching and building up a lot of these programs. We, acknowledge that this is no easy feat, and it does take time and resources, and there's certainly a balance to that. And so there is some additional needs there in order to really be able to implement and drive progress on these strategies. Capacity building could also include things like additional funding to implement community-wide assessments and a climate plan, as well as some of the programs and strategies that are identified on the action plan.
Great, thanks Melody. So this slide just discusses some of the final steps. Again, I think this was already touched on a bit in our earlier discussion, but gathering feedback from today and from the public hearing on December 12th, then it's sort of at the town's pleasure as to, the progress for the plan after feedback has been incorporated. Again, we'd like to hear your thoughts, any questions you still have after today's discussion and or recommendations. Anything that wasn't in there that, as far as strategies or supporting actions you would like to see or not see, we are all ears. So with that, we've got about 7 minutes left before noon, but we want to open it up just for your final questions.
So in the actual plan, it's more detailed than this presentation in terms
Correct.
of additional recommendations and things like that. But they are in fact recommendations. So they're all just ideas. It's like a menu of different things that could be helpful toward achieving that goal. And so it's really up to the town then to look at these things, and maybe new ideas will emerge over time. There'll be new strategies for carbon sequestration that might be applicable to the community, or other ways to reduce energy through conservation or whatever it might be, building design. So I think because we're considering this as part of our comprehensive plan, that some people are concerned that adopting this will mean all these radical changes, but it actually doesn't. These are just ideas for the future town boards to consider in terms of meeting well-established goals that the town has already adopted. So I just wanted to point that out. I mean, it didn't sound like there was anything being recommended that was unreasonable or pie in the sky. It all seemed pretty
So
generic, but I'm sorry.
can I speak to that?
Sure.
So once this is adopted as part of the comprehensive plan, it has the weight of law. And there are items in here that say require, they say mandate, or incentivize. But with words like require and mandate in there, I think it's up to us to be extremely careful with what we put into our plan. I want to bring everyone to page 17.
But they all sort of start with.
But I just want to bring, but I want to bring everybody, I want to bring everybody to page 17, where it says, the town's climate action plan was informed by stakeholder input through community engagement tactics, including a survey, public workshops, and hearings held throughout the course of its development. To ensure an equitable process, surveys, plural, were also conducted as an accessible alternative to the public workshops and hearings. A visualization of the timeline for the development of the CAP is presented on the following page. I want to stop there, and I want to bring your attention to the survey that was completed on August 23rd. There were 10 people that responded to that survey from the Flanders, Riverhead, Northampton area. There was then a public workshop on March 15th, at which 11 people spoke. Most were from the Sustainability Committee. In that meeting, Michelangelo Lieberman said that there would be plenty more opportunities for the public to weigh in through the process of more workshops, hearings, and there'd be this whole open process, so everybody felt comfortable with the plan before it was adopted. At the end of that meeting, which got cut short due to time limits, he says, there are a lot of people on here that we didn't get to. I assure you, we're gonna have more opportunities for input. Here's where I have a real problem. The plan that is mentioned in what we got on November 13th, I believe it was, it says the timeline is presented on the following page. The timeline in my book is not the timeline that is on the town website. The town website timeline removes steps, including an additional workshop, an additional public hearing, and a work session. In the one that is now online, it says that this is a work session on the draft plan. We are then going to have a public hearing on the revised plan, and then the final cap will be released or voted on. In the one in the timeline that we were presented with, which I wouldn't have even known they were different until somebody else asked me a question about the timeline, and I said, no, we're doing all of that. No, we're not. It's different. There was supposed to be another public workshop on the draft, then a public hearing on the draft, then a public hearing on the revised plan, and then the final cap would be released. So my issue here is that the Sustainability Committee received the draft that we are looking at this summer. The town board did not receive this until November 13th. The public did not receive this until November 13th. There are a lot of issues in here with building, and I would like the opportunity to take this plan to the Trades Advisory Committee and get their input on things that are being recommended for mandating and incentivizing and things of that nature, because this wasn't presented to a single CAC. It wasn't presented to a single committee other than the Sustainability Committee. And I think before we add something to our comprehensive plan, we owe it to the public to at least follow the timeline that we set and what we told them we would do.
Did you already give it to the Trades Advisory Committee?
No, I have not had a meeting with them yet,
Why not?
because I got this 2.5 weeks ago.
When's their next meeting?
I have to set one up after I give them time to read it.
That's a new committee. So, and I know there's been meetings out within the community, because I know people have participated in meetings that I wasn't even aware those meetings were going on to try to get input toward the development of this plan, so, but, you know, to Cindy's comment about mandates, it just seems to me that these are, every time it says mandate, it's prefaced by consider these things, and there's that menu of things, and consider mandate. That doesn't mean the town board in the future will mandate those things, but they can consider that, and if they are going to, there'll be public hearings, and analysis, and further review. But this is just basically a broad document creating some choices for the future to address a existential crisis. So
The comprehensive plan holds the weight of law, correct? Am I wrong in that?
Comprehensive plan, comprehensive
zoning is
plans
supposed to
are
follow.
what zoning is based on. If you're going to change your zoning categories, or you want to look to a plan, and it's good for a municipality to have an updated comprehensive plan so that they can rely on that plan when they, and to back what zoning changes they make.
I think the question is it code? Is it Southampton Town Code?
Not that it's a code, but it is what your
Councilwoman,
code is based
Can
on.
I get the answer to my question?
But that you're asking the question that I was asking, that wasn't what I was asking.
Okay, holding the weight of law. So is it, all right, then let's parse this out a little bit. Is this code, Southampton Town Code, which is our law?
Is a comprehensive, I'm
Is
talking
this
generically, or
this
this?
update or this
Well,
addition to the comprehensive plan code?
No, I mean, I haven't looked at the plan, I haven't looked at this, haven't been able to digest this plan yet, but.
We base code
If
off
it's
of
included in a
plans.
comprehensive plan, then no, it's not.
Zoning is only
exactly a
valid
code,
when you
but-
have a comprehensive plan,
Right.
otherwise it's not valid. So you wanna have a comprehensive plan in order to culminate into zoning. It's
Right.
the underpinnings to zoning, but
Right.
it is not zoning itself.
Right, okay,
And
yeah.
I mean, that's
Exactly.
sustainability 400.
It's a guide, it's a.
It's a
Then
guideline.
don't adopt it as part of the comprehensive plan, adopt it as a policy guide.
I don't think it's inconsistent with the sustainability, was a 400 plan?
Right.
There's probably 400 recommendations in that plan. Some have been implemented, some have not. But a lot of this is just simply, restating what is in that plan that's already part of the comprehensive plan. When I've talked to people about this, I haven't heard anybody say anything that's objectionable yet. And when I say, we're considering adopting a climate action plan, they say, why haven't you done that already? Like, why are you doing that now? That should have been done a long time ago. So I don't.
So Jay, here's one that I find objectionable. Create infrastructure lots for renewable energy in subdivision regulations in place of open space?
No,
So, set asides.
that is, the idea there is like you can create a sump. Sometimes you create like a sump in a subdivision.
Recharge.
A recharge. You may take that same idea and say, okay, instead of just drainage, we can add solar arrays, so the whole subdivision can have that instead of everybody have to put it on their roof. You can put it in the sump, and that's an infrastructure lot, or allow.
But this
for-
specifically says for renewable energy.
Yeah.
So that
I
would
just said,
create, that would be solar, that would be BESS, that would be anything that,
Well, you're gonna decide if that's not gonna be allowed, the best thing, so that's already in play.
I feel like we should follow the timeline we
subdivisions.
set out.
But you would have to go into chapter 292, go into that law and create that change and have hearings upon that, which is the supervisor's point,
the
in
change of
order to
code.
enact it. So it could say require it, but it could be defeated in its process.
All I'm
It's
asking
not
for
necessarily a
is,
fait accompli because it says it in
but all
here.
I'm asking for is for our other committees within the town to have an opportunity to digest this and weigh in on
Well,
it
isn't that the
before we
point
act on
of
it.
putting it out there at the public hearing, so how many work sessions are what we need to have? I mean, there's also, there's the logistic problem of budgeting, and we're happy to have as many people as possible. Like you said, only 11 people came to the meeting, we can.
No, there
we
was
can
11 people had the
advertise-
opportunity to speak at the meeting.
Sure, and we got written commentary that we gave everything to, Bramble as well, but I'm just, making the point that we're
Jen?
happy to hear from more people about very specific action items.
Part of my hesitation, and, we are trying to get as much public input. The public input I've heard so far from a number of people has been extremely positive, but, one of the things, besides the crisis that we're facing, that really, should we be delaying much? But also, Councilman Bouvier's worked on this for years. And, I'd like to, if we can, give him the opportunity, if there's broad support for this, to be able to vote on a plan that he's worked on for many years, rather than just, past the January 1 deadline. So I hear what you're saying, but none of these are just ideas, and I'm not finding anything objectionable in those ideas, but I just would hate to see John not have an opportunity to.
That's not the proper
to
way
close the
to.
finish line.
Janice, one of the aspects
Right
of
to
this plan that
legislate.
I think should be addressed is that we, as a town, have been moving in this direction previous to 2019. We've brought in electric vehicles. Our parks departments, they use electric tools. We're a climate smart municipality. And we have some of the highest Hertz ratings in the country. That was before 2019. So we're actually measuring off of some of those accomplishments to hopefully go farther in sequestering carbon, right? So
Yes,
we're
that's
actually
correct.
measuring off of, in my opinion, a pretty good track record on this.
Right, and the idea is to decarbonize or to significantly lower our emissions across all these different sectors.
Right. This building, for instance, it's a former school. We retrofitted the heating system. We use heat pumps to redistribute heat and cooling throughout the building. That is something that we've already done aside from this. So we're actually moving in this direction.
We got an award for that.
We got an award for that.
Right, and the recommendation is to consider those ESCO audits and to consider continuing doing that good work in any other facility and using that as a model of success.
Yeah, a lot of this deals with town buildings.
Right,
That's
right.
true.
So, I just want to be clear that I'm not against the climate action plan. I just want our other community organizations to be able, and committees to be able to weigh in on it and get their feedback and make sure everybody feels like they had a part in the process and they're their concerns were understood and met. And Janice, I'm not holding this against you because I know Michelangelo left. You haven't had any staff.
Yeah.
You've been working on the Riverside Sewer District and a million other things. So by no way am I putting this on you.
No, I understand, that's fine.
I just would like to not rush this through because in my opinion, that's not a good or proper way to legislate.
I wouldn't want some of the concerns about the best energy storage system to get conflated in this, because that seems to be an undertone. And I know that, may I?
Yes.
And I know that that is a concern of the community that, because I've heard it at the
Yeah,
podium, that
sure.
this is gonna go through and you're gonna be doing X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
And, this really is a guiding document for our comprehensive plan as we move forward. Anything we do based on BES or some of the code, that's going to require public hearings as well. So,
You're definitely gonna hear from them, but there are things in here that I have heard from the Trades Advisory Committee specifically on that I would like them to give me feedback on and address because I know their concerns that they have brought up on things.
Can
So,
they attend on December 12th as well?
like I said, we've had it for 2.5 weeks. I just got it to them, so I don't know that, everyone, it's the holidays. That's the other problem with this. It's the holidays. It's the end of the year. Nobody's paying attention to this, and if they are, they're gonna be here for very specific reasons. So I would like to get a broader range of people involved and let them, this way we can say, we heard from our Trades Advisory Committee, we heard from our CACs in other hamlets, and this was the feedback we got, or they're fine with it.
Perhaps just as a procedural thing, in your resolution setting public hearings, it creates a requirement for a referral to all those agencies moving forward so that everybody is noticed at the same time. And it could just be a simple resolve, the clerk is directed to send it to CACs,
But, like,
send it to the trades, send it to whoever you want to send it
I
to.
wish that we got
in the
this draft when the Sustainability Committee got it. Like,
You're absolutely
we should have
right.
gotten this, and then we could have brought it to our CACs, we could have brought it to our committees, and we wouldn't be, and again, I'm not blaming you for that, because I know it's,
But it is my responsibility, so I do take that blame. And
so
do
I would,
apologize.
that's just what I would, if a draft of something goes out, I think it should go out to everyone.
You're right, I couldn't agree more.
Can I just ask, can we go through the plan in terms of battery energy storage? Any references to battery energy storage,
There
where
aren't
they are?
specific.
Yeah, it's not gonna say that.
And, how you dealt with the battery energy storage issue here? Because I haven't found anything in it relating to battery energy storage.
It's within, it's not specific.
Yeah, we did try to, because I think we had talked with Janice and then some of the energy experts from our team, and also Michelangelo when he was still involved in the process, and we had, determined that, again, the town's doing a lot of great things. Mike had said that the battery energy storage component was a sensitive one, and that there were, and we all agreed that there were definitely other ways to achieve emissions reductions that may not involve that particular type of approach. So, we did try to explore as many options as we could for the energy-related emissions reduction strategies and supporting actions that did not include or relate to or recommend specifically battery energy storage systems. I think there was maybe one reference in the plan to it in context, as a contextual reference, but we can certainly review the document and comb through, again, an additional time and see, if there's anything in there that discusses
So
that.
there is no recommendation to increase battery energy storage throughout the town?
I don't think we
No,
included that.
there is not.
Not
Not
exactly
specifically,
on that.
no.
We have one that's kind of
Because I
related
want to
to
make that clear,
partnerships,
because that's being used, that people are saying the CAP is going, this plan is going to promote battery energy storage, and I'm not seeing that anywhere in the plan. I didn't know where they came up with that. It just sounds, I know people are very concerned about battery energy storage, and we do have a moratorium on battery energy storage proposals, and we're studying
Yeah.
whether it makes sense in our community or not. But in terms of this plan, it is not promoting in any way battery energy storage that I could see. And I just want to make that clear.
But I did have a question actually on the plan.
Oh, great.
On just the layout of the plan. There's so many stats and so much data,
Uh-huh.
and there's no footnotes to the appendix, and it would be really helpful if, like, throughout the document, when you have a study or stats, if you could hyperlink it so that you could just go right to that study. And then the other thing I had was the icons. On the top of some of the pages, even online, it says go to the icons here or something, or it says see icons,
like it's-
or view legend. And if you click
Yeah,
on it,
it's
it doesn't
supposed to be
bring up the
purple.
legend.
Got it.
So you're
Okay,
flipping
yeah,
back
it
and
needs to be active.
forth to see what legend you're looking at. And I mean, that was just two things that, and then
Yeah.
the online version, it's nice in the book format, but in the online version, there are some paragraphs that go from one page over to the next page. So if you're reading it online, it looks like the paragraph stops, but it's on the next page because it's in the
Right.
book format. That was
Okay.
just a few layout options that I.
Those are excellent comments. Yeah, I think we could definitely make adjustments and add some footnotes in, and then, have sort of a version for online and a version for print. Because I think typically it's like, when you have documents posted online, you can click a URL for the online and click a URL if you want to download and print it out.
And again, for you on the community feedback and the engagement, I don't think that was your shortcoming. I think it just got kind of lost in the transition of losing Michelangelo, and he was full on into this, and I don't doubt for a second that he would have had 6 more public workshops on
Oh,
it.
definitely.
But-
And now we have Seth, who's in the audience here, who is willing to do whatever to take up that baton and work with whoever we need to.
Right.
So we have the
Right.
ability to meet with whoever would like to go over anything, so now that we have Seth, I think that would be very helpful.
I just don't want to rush it through. I think that's the biggest thing to me right now. We need to digest it and get it out there and see what people have to say.
Right, well, we do have a hearing scheduled, so.
Yes, December
So
12th at 1
Janice-
o'clock, and Emery and her team will be back to go over it again, do a presentation shorter but similar, and then be able to respond to the technical things that may come up in that hearing so that, they can speak to it right then and there, right, Emery?
Councilman Martel?
Yeah, everything that's in here that references back to the town, I think is wonderful. I think we should absolutely lead by example. What concerns me is, we have 5 bullet points about what the town is doing, and then it's like, well, we may actually put this in residential. And that's where people are asking the questions. As far as the BESS goes, BESS versus solar, worlds apart. So can we be more specific in some of the documentations that it would say first solar arrays versus a BESS or any future other,
Sustainable
you know,
energy.
yeah, sustainable energy options at that point? There's just there's enough vagueness to be, yes, this is just for future boards to use, but then there's some vagueness that kind of backs us into a corner on some things here too.
Sure, but of course, assuming there's some appetite in the future, if there's safety provisions are worked out and you eliminate any possibility of putting battery energy near residential and over an industrial, you may want to put some battery storage in an industrial zone away from everyone.
Right.
And I think there's terminology in here too that people aren't familiar with, like aggregate energy and microgrids, and what does that entail?
Okay, that's a good comment.
Yeah, I'm gonna actually ask you to turn to page 35. The cap carbon reduction forecasting. On the right side, there's a paragraph, while these findings. If you go down to, for instance, many of the code amendments included in the sustainable design and land use climate priority are designed to facilitate the construction of both small and large scale renewable energy systems discussed in the clean energy climate priority. Can you tell me what that is?
Emery?
Did you say the clean energy climate, sorry, could you repeat the last part? It was just hard to
Clean
hear.
energy climate priority, sorry.
I think that's supposed to be CLCPA.
That's a state, can you go further and explain what that is, the state law?
The climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. It's just the state's goals for reducing carbon emissions statewide, and they have various targets set at 2040, so the same sort of timeline that the town is targeting. They want to go to 100% zero emissions electricity by 2040 at the state level, and then, ideally by 2050, the state of New York is completely off of fossil fuels by 2050. So I think the reference there to the small and large scale renewable energy was just, in reference to following kind of the state's overall leadership.
I think we probably need a hyperlink to the plan there, like
Yeah.
as the
Sure.
Councilwoman McNamara
Sure.
was saying, a footnote with a
Sorry, you said that was
hyperlink.
page 35?
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, I think that specifically was speaking to, for instance, how we're not really able to quantify something like a code amendment. So just kind of including that as context to, basically how, from a methodological standpoint, we treated things like partnerships and incentives and code amendments that are, we aren't able to quantify in the same way as some of the other initiatives here.
Okay, thank you.
So a small-scale renewable energy system could mean a community solar field, which is, as far as our code and land use goes, it's nearly impossible currently for different parcels to create such a microgrid, right? A small energy conglomerate where they're producing their own energy. And like somehow we could make this happen, but currently our code does not support it. So small-scale energy grid, right?
Good recommendation, yeah.
On page.
I mean, and people, by the way, have asked me for this, and, because they want to explore this in their own communities, because they're committed.
I mean, you could have also, in a subdivision, you could have reserved an area for potential sewage, like what do they call those?
Cluster
Cluster
system.
system too. The county's still not allowing that.
That would be the best thing, because then
That
we
would be
wouldn't
a
have to.
wonderful thing too, but that sort of
Great.
falls into the same line of thinking, except it's more about nitrogen. Can I ask I'm sure you guys reviewed that Sustainability 400 plan, and Janice, there are, I think, hundreds of recommendations in there. Has anybody looked to see in the recommendations here, how many of them are just restating things that have already been stated? And how many of them are new, and if there's any inconsistencies with what was stated in the larger sustainability plan?
Yeah, I can speak to that. So part of our process in developing the CAP was one of the very first things we did look through, this is the Southampton 400 plan. We basically took all of the recommendations in that plan and put them in a large matrix. And then we went through and evaluated each one and determined, okay, and this was when actually Mike was still involved, so we were able to determine which ones have already been advanced or are in progress, or maybe the town is kind of, currently pursuing, or they've already checked off. And then which, and from his point of view and his input, and some of his colleagues, and we also spoke with the town engineer to get some feedback on, which things are likely to advance in the near future, and then where there maybe were gaps. So it was sort of a gap analysis that we did using that matrix, and we were able to narrow down some of the recommendations that hadn't yet been acted on and that were worth carrying forward and or building on in the climate action plan.
So the answer is
we looked at those
a lot of what is in this plan is already been stated in the sustainability plan. But maybe to a slightly lesser degree. I mean, that would be helpful to know. So what is new and what is a reinstatement of something that's already in our comprehensive plan.
So maybe something like a graphic that kind of summarizes, some of the Southampton 400 recommendations and then the sort of additional CAP specific recommendations.
Or as you're making the recommendations to maybe some sort of footnote or asterisk, so we know that was already, that's something that's not new, that's just a restatement of something that the town's already adopted as a goal or a possible strategy.
Yeah, I think that could be done graphically, just so that there's a visual distinction, you're saying, in the document itself.
Well, it's also as we debate some of these recommendations about, what effect might that have in the future if those policies are adopted, and that could lead to some hesitation with adopting this plan, to say, okay, you already have an adopted plan that says that. It's not inconsistent, it's just you're just stating it again. Because I think actually there were so many recommendations in the Sustainability 400 plan. And yes, some of them have been implemented, but a lot have not yet been implemented. But I think that, potentially goes further than this plan. Dennis, no, would you agree? It was
Yeah, I think,
pretty.
they should be looked at in tandem, and I think that matrix, maybe even just provide us that matrix as an appendices, so that that work is not lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I also want to give, we have Tip Berlin here, who is on our sustainability committee and had raised his hand before. So Tip, did you want to say something? If you do, you're going to have to come over to here. And I know it's sometimes challenging to speak. Tip, if you don't know, Tip is a nuclear engineer by training.
It's independent of this discussion.
But,
You're not putting in nuclear facilities. in the
highly
town.
knowledgeable individual on these types of issues.
I just wanted to make 2 points. One, Bess is mentioned once in the plan, and I can tell you exactly what it says, because I assumed this question would come up. It says, explore incentives for distributed energy systems, including small battery energy storage systems, BESS, for commercial developments. That sentence is used twice, but that's it.
And it says small, and it's specifically for commercial use, so it's not.
That's what it
Commercial
says.
buildings, so not an industrial scale.
And it says
Battery.
explore incentives.
Yeah.
There's no requirement in here for that.
Doesn't, every house that has solar panels has a battery energy storage, something in the rack or something, right? Don't they store the energy if you have a solar?
You can buy battery storage devices, but most houses, our house, for example, does not have battery energy storage. There are small inputs to the grid. The grid can handle those
Oh, I see.
without any disruption. It's when you get large percentages of the grid covered by solar, for example, which is intermittent,
I just
that you
say that
start
because
to
I
need.
want to just create a distinction between, people store energy in batteries all over the place, but when I think the public concern is about these industrial scale facilities that are working sort of as utilities, that are downloading power from the grid and then releasing it, during the day in those peak times. And that may be different than these small scale facilities that are tied into solar panels that, unfortunately, we use the same terminology, but, I think the public concern is those utility scale battery energy storage. So,
Yep.
I just wanted to say that, but I'm
One
sorry.
other point, if I may. The Sustainability 400-plus plan is not a plan in the normal sense of the word. We didn't have the money. Janice was present at the beginning. We didn't have the money or the resources to develop, for example, the carbon inventory, the emissions inventory. So what we put together was, to a degree, a wish list that says, these are good things to do. We can't prioritize them because we didn't have the resources to estimate the cost. That plan does give a qualitative estimate of cost or the impact. So don't mistake the Sustainability 400 plan as a substitute for this.
This is much more quantifiable.
That's not
yeah.
part of the comprehensive plan, correct?
It is.
It is?
That was.
It
amendment
is.
to-
It was
It was
adopted in
And that was very controversial, by the
2013,
way.
I think.
That was an extremely controversial
How
plan.
much public input went into that thing?
Same level of detail, I think.
Public hearings, some
Public
community
hearing,
outreach.
many public hearings. There was a lot of concern. It was a different time then.
Many.
But look at what
Thank you.
happened since then. That was 2012. Nothing bad took place. Everybody was so upset that something terrible was going to happen. Nothing terrible took place. We all are just trying to prioritize which way to go and not argue amongst ourselves. Have a roadmap that you decide on, and then we implement. That's really the point.
I'm just concerned when you use words like mandate and, you know.
Understandable, and we can work to fix that in a way that
So
makes
just
sense.
give me an example, because everyone I saw always said, consider the following. And then it would say mandate, but it wouldn't, it was prefaced by consider a mandate, not mandate.
Adopt a policy mandating solar-ready roofs
What
for
page are
newly.
you on?
This is on.
That's
it's-
page 74.
You're looking at it in.
You know,
70.
if you don't, here's a good example. When Gabreski Airport was built,
No, 73.
we had literally a PDD law. We were debating at, the town board was debating at the time, and they didn't they had 500,000 square feet of flat roofs, and they didn't mandate solar there.
Mm-hmm.
And they had the opportunity to put that in the code, and they just didn't. And
Stronger
they-
I-beams
to
or
this
stronger
day,
trusses.
Every time a site plan had come in, and we said, can you put some solar on the roof? You know, and they were like, nah. And there was nothing to make them do it. And so, you know, even though mandate sounds scary and terrible, we love the incentive side of things to give people, you know, something.
Well, it says,
Or
well, a lot of them
do it.
say incentivize or require.
Yeah, but if you don't require it, most people will just opt to not do it.
And these are under the
So that's
strategies.
where that mandate word is such a terrible word, really, but, there should be a give and take on that, but there is, the final analysis is, if left to a developer, most likely they'll just opt to not do it.
And these are under recommended strategies for the board to take action on, for a board
Yeah,
to
you
take
would still
action
have
on
to
in the future.
Write a code, adopt a code.
And that's under amend codes and policies to promote clean energy development.
Yeah, but if we put the code through that doesn't comply with this plan, part of our plan, we get Article 78 and said, you can't do that because this is what your comprehensive plan says that you should do. It's happened.
Possible, I
So,
suppose.
you know,
Anybody can sue anyone for any
You're
reason.
right. I mean, the court will look at if you know, what is your basis for your change? Why did you do this? Do you have a plan? So they will look at, if a comprehensive plan exists, and not every town doesn't have an updated comprehensive plan, but if they do, the court will look at that, and, you know, and they might not say, you know, town board, you got to 100% follow the comprehensive plan. They typically will not say that, but they'll look to see, well, the justification for the action you took, and if you have a comprehensive plan, and you have wording, and you're following that, then sure,
Like in Hampton
that's a-
Bays, the quarter.
So we have
Sure,
this as
that's,
part of
you know,
a
it's weighs
comprehensive
heavily in
plan, and we make code to, and I'm reading from this, to incentivize transit-oriented and mixed-use development, which I fully support, and my constituents do too. You know, we're doing the right thing, and we have the plan to back up our code.
But I guarantee
Okay.
you're gonna have people that are gonna come in that are gonna say, you know, this plan calls for infill development in downtowns pretty much. So who is that going to impact? And is that gonna impact, you know, your zoning for Hampton Bays? Because now you have something as part of your comprehensive plan that says, put all the density there.
And,
You know
and
what,
that's
we
part
have
of
that
our,
already. We have that from 1999.
Yeah.
Every single solitary plan we have says promote infill development, and I can show you at least 10 different ones. that
But I'm
say it.
telling you, that's
Yeah.
gonna be an argument with this.
Sure,
Well-
but this is nothing new, you know, like, that's just good planning. That's
That's-
just smart
I mean, we
growth,
can-
instead of
That's-
sprawling out on a farm
You know, if we're
field, you
concerned
put
about
infill
that, we can
development.
add in extra words, but, you know, everything is prefaced with, you know, these, you know, are recommendations. These are, you know, ideas, the specific strategies intended to help guide the town toward meaningful, you know, measurable and manageable climate action. It's always prefaced by, you know, this is a set of strategies for consideration. But if it would make people feel better, like before it says mandate, we could say, you know, consider mandating. We could repeat those words that are sort of prefacing all of these recommendations. I have no problem with that.
It's our recommendation to mandate or something, you know.
Right.
and in an
I mean,
example
that
of-
wouldn't be too hard,
Jay?
right, to add in
Yeah,
that?
we can absolutely, you know, add that kind of consider
Yeah.
requisition in front of.
We would
us,
recommend, or,
yeah,
you
to
know,
your point,
our,
we were
right.
Yeah,
So then,
maybe
kind of
that-
looking at all of
more
these,
comfort level because-
recommendations, so we didn't necessarily,
it gives
in
the,
instances where considers not kind of prefacing it,
right.
yeah, to your point, we weren't,
Yeah.
necessarily indicating that that was
It would give the
something that
board,
would be mandated or adopted.
it would give the board a little wiggle room on a case-by-case
Yeah.
basis. And stuff like that.
And I
We could
understand,
do
like I
that.
said, I understand that, you know, removing things or not requiring them kind of shifts those percentage numbers because now it's not something that will happen, so it kind of takes it out of, or, you know, not necessarily going to happen. Like, all of this has to happen to meet those percentages that you put forward.
Right,
So-
and if it's any, if it's helpful context, you know, the language in this climate action plan is similar in terms of style and tone to other climate action plans that other towns and municipalities have issued and adopted, and there's a balance, right, between, you know, making a recommendation and sort of making it something that's actionable and that would, in reality, you know, potentially have legs versus, you know, keeping it to a place where you don't wanna, upset people or make people feel like you're, it's top down, you know what I mean? You wanna be sensitive to, you know, community concerns, even in the language that's chosen.
Because I mean, I did go through some of your previous work, and you know, for some of the SUNYs and where you had a very specific, you know, like you're dealing with a college and their reduction. Where I think it would be a lot easier for you to say, hey, we're going to look at the town, do an inventory, and give you a plan for yourselves, rather than take all the variables in for the entire town. And I appreciate that. I just, you know, it's grandiose and it's a lot to digest.
That's not what they're doing here.
No, but that's
Okay,
what they've
good.
done in other, so
Right, I understand.
So you can get more specific with your numbers and your, like, they could actually quantify different, like, power plants and heating and cooling systems within the college and how they would phase them out over time and the costs, and so it's a lot easier, not easier to do, but it's a much smaller scale than saying, you know, you can't take all the variables in for 69,000 people and put them into a plan. It's,
And with 69,000 people and as elected officials, looking at strategy SD1, incentivize transit-oriented and mixed-use development, I support that, and I also know that there are other people that may not. And so as far as criticism go, you know, it's going to happen, and we are going to, you know, make our best decision to move this town forward. It's going to be there. So, you know, we can certainly change some of the language here, but I see these as recommendations for future boards to consider, and, you know, I like that.
It's a roadmap, a guiding document, but if putting in language will help get the, you know, allay some of those concerns that, you know, this is going to happen, you know, this is for a future board to consider all of these things, but it's for this board potentially to lay out this document with some of those ideas that could get you to where the town has already said it wants to go. So, yeah, so maybe, I mean, this is the one we're going to public hearing on, but I think that that's a good recommendation, is to clarify that they're recommendations.
And also, very understanding that people may have not had a chance to weigh in, but instead of using the time to say, we didn't have a chance to weigh in, it would be better use of the time to say,
What
you know,
what your
page
choices are,
71
yeah.
is, my issue is this, and that, versus, you know, you didn't have 3 public workshops, you only had 1, or whatever our criticism is. We accept that criticism, but it's more productive to actually say what the issue is. And if that's the only issue, you know, we can try to remedy that. But if it's, you know, if we had more workshops, what would take place? What would come out of it? What is it that you're looking at for it to say is the most important thing.
Yeah, well, and some of the things, you know, like, let's say the recommendation for solar-ready roofs, right?
Right.
You know, that's a design criteria. And if the town were actually going to require roofs be designed in a way that they're set up for solar, probably needs to go through the landmarks committee. There's, you know, there's other boards that may want to weigh in and say, okay, is that going to mean that our roofs no longer are going to be historic looking, or whatever it is? But that's for future debate. It's a good idea to consider roof designs, you know, that are
And that's why I would like to,
capable
it
of
would feel
putting
much more
solar
comfortable.
panels on.
with a planning document that says consider instead of mandate.
Sure, I understand that. Consider mandating.
That's kind of what it says now.
It says mandate
To
in a couple
consider-
sections, yeah, but it
right,
also
strategy
says
two,
amend
mandate.
code and policy, and then
To
to
mandate.
mandate.
Yeah.
Right,
So,
but it
but
says
you would
cons-
have to consider that in order to even get to a resolution.
But before it says these are strategies
Yes.
to be considered.
Nothing can happen until you go through that public process for each and everything that requires a public
Mhm.
process. So you always have that attached to all these actions.
Yeah.
I think we all want it to be a document that, not everybody is going to love it, and not everybody is going to.
69,000 people.
It's never going to happen, but I would feel more comfortable if I know on my own that we got it in the hands of as many people as possible. We heard their feedback, especially, in like getting it to Franca and getting it to some of our other CACs and civics, and giving them an opportunity to just say, hey, maybe we're not comfortable with this, but maybe you could change, there's gonna be a lot of feedback. There's gonna be things you can change, and there's gonna be things you say, no, it has to stay this way because.
Right.
And we just have to at least give people the opportunity to feel like they were heard.
Yeah, but it's important too that they understand that this isn't a zoning code change. It is potentially part of a comprehensive plan, but it's a set of recommendations to address climate change. And for future boards to consider, each recommendation, if they want to move forward. But if we can tone down the language a little bit to make it even clearer that these are just ideas for future consideration, I have no problem with that. I just want to
Yeah,
make sure
it's
that when
supposed
those
to be-
people are reviewing it are also reviewing it, understanding that we're not requiring solar-ready roofs. That is not something we're doing. We're adopting a plan that is recommending the board consider that in the future.
Well, it's the same thing with the elimination of fossil fuels as heating inside homes and commercial businesses. The only suggestion to that is incentivizing, the transition for that, either through tax reductions and, there's nothing that says we're heading towards eliminating that.
Right, like we're not in the business, I heard people very upset, the state is talking about propane and, meanwhile, we just literally got a propane tank. So people are like, wait a
love
minute,
cooking with gas, too.
don't take away my gas stove, we're not talking about that. We're talking about just
The
higher
state
level
is.
actions and strategies. And like they said initially, there may be other things that come down that will bring that down. Despite all our best efforts, they're gonna do
This
it.
doesn't even get us there.
Yeah, and this doesn't even get us there. So we have a lot of work to do. We need a roadmap forward. We need a buy-in from the public and from you to believe that these steps are going to get us somewhere. They've quantified that they'll get us somewhere. And we know that that is, if we don't take the first step, we're not going to get anywhere. So it has to be, considered that these steps at least will do something. They have a measurable impact, and they also, sort of say these are the high ticket price items, these are low hanging fruit, and then we would go through the plan and try to figure out which is best to start with, and that's what the committee would help when the liaison to that committee.
Any other comments,
No.
questions? Everybody good? All
Thank you
right.
for going over the plan with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
So we'll see
Really,
you on
really
the 12th.
appreciate your feedback, extremely valuable.
Okay, thank you.
See you at the hearing.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Within those, like an hour more than they
Okay,
wanted.
They tried to get at that.
so now we are
Thank you, Tip.
Cha-ching, cha-ching.
about a half an hour behind schedule here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You can go.
Thanks.
Run, Janice, run.
So we're gonna go to updates. Let's see.
I'm not gonna take any more.
So I guess the first update is, we already sort of covered earlier. Charles, this is your last full-time day with the town, so we really, again, appreciate all you've been doing. Charles Certain has been the man behind the camera here. So, but really instrumental through the pandemic in terms of being able to keep meetings going and being able to give the public broader access to our hearings and work sessions.
I feel like he should come out and get on camera.
Come on, Charles.
He likes to be behind the camera. Camera guy.
Come on, get in here.
It's sort of like meeting the Wizard of Oz. You're gonna come out from behind the curtain here. Thank you, Charles.
You have to go to the mic if you want to speak.
You've been doing this for how many
Can you
years?
sing? Can you give us a song?
You gotta go to the mic.
Play a little sax.
I just asked you that
Oh, and
question.
he can't even put
I
himself
just
on.
wanted to do that because Charles
Yeah.
often, when somebody is speaking and they can't,
So,
he's recording and you can't hear him, he's always saying, "Go to the mic." So,
just a little history, just in case you guys don't know. CTV started in 2005. I came in 2005. Funny story. A friend of mine told me, "Hey man, there's a ad in the paper. This would be perfect for you. You need to go." So I came to the town and they said, "There's no job open." So I went back to my friend and he says, "Man, there's no job." So I walked into Bruce Nalapinski's office, and you'll enjoy this.
so Bruce, just say, so Bruce was the head of.
He was the head of CTV. And the first thing I said to him, I said, "Man, the video is great, man. But the audio kind of doesn't sound good." And I said, "I'm an audio engineer. Are you looking for someone?" And he hired me right there. So I worked 2 years part-time, and then I became a civil servant. But when I first started doing the town board, I had to sit right there with one camera. So we've come a long way. I think Southampton is very ahead of most of the PEG channels in the state. So we were one of the first to get 3 cameras in the room. So it's been a good journey. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
We
And
appreciate
I'm
you.
sure the public is aware of the other places other than the portal to go and look at meetings and shows and things like that. So you set up a whole YouTube.
We have a bunch of different things. You can watch the stream live on ctvsouthampton.com, and you can also, don't tell Cindy, but you can go to YouTube and watch it live.
And for the public's knowledge, our official repository of our meetings is the town clerk's office as
That
per
is
state law.
correct.
Right.
But
Okay.
But sometimes the picture and the audio is clearer on the YouTube channel.
I think so, only because, we've had this thing with Cablevision, and I don't want to slam them, but their system is pretty antiquated for the PEG channels. We don't have HD, we don't have, so we send them an HD signal, but they bump it down to standard def. And that's the good thing about YouTube, it's HD,
It's HD and right. And is it SEA-TV? Is that what it is?
It's SEA TV,
Just like YouTube.
Southampton,
Oh, no hyphen. It's SEA-TV
Southampton.
Southampton.
No,
What
well,
is
if
that?
you just go to YouTube, if you
You'll
go
find
to YouTube and you type in CTV Southampton, it'll go to our channel.
Okay, SEA-TV Southampton.
Yeah.
Okay.
But, I love this.
C.
I've done this a long time and I really love what I do. I plan to, keep doing it at some capacity. This is probably the second time I've ever spoken at a town board meeting. And so 18 years, I'm really happy to,
You've spoken at a town board meeting a lot more than twice. We hear you almost every meeting.
Back away from the microphone,
That's
please.
true, that's true.
Back.
In person,
Step back,
yeah.
Well,
come to the mic.
we're gonna
need a
miss.
saxophone.
We're gonna miss you.
Yeah, this was a challenge though. This whole thing was a big challenge with the Zoom and a good challenge though. I think at least the people at home can watch a town board meeting live and speak.
participate,
Yeah.
Participate, and that's gone really well.
So I think that's
appreciate you figuring that out.
The only thing that COVID was good for,
Okay.
Yeah.
you know?
Well, we appreciate your work, Charles.
I
and,
appreciate
you know, I mean, you
you
said
guys.
civil servant before, government employees, you and other people in this building and in this town, incredibly important. It is where the rubber hits the pavement, you know, you're
Yeah.
doing the work, and, you know, I appreciate your
And
work
enjoy
and the
your
work of our
retirement a little
employees as
A little
well.
bit, you know, at least half.
But you're
I'll be here part-time.
You're gonna
yeah.
stay here part-time.
Yeah, yeah.
And you'll
I don't
help-
want to just
You'll
give
help
it
train
up.
your replacement, so,
Yeah, definitely. Be
not
my,
that you can be replaced.
no, it's, yeah. I'm not going to tell him everything.
Okay.
There you go.
Turn around and wave at the camera, please. You're looking at the back of your, there you go.
All right. Let's All right.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you, Charles.
Certain moves.
Got the free plug.
Yeah, you did. You did. And I got to make we'll miss you, that I'm certain, but he's actually certain. So.
I heard it.
And so, but that's my segue into the Big Duck lighting. So, yeah, last night was the Big Duck lighting. It's really a county event, but it's sort of a town event because it's here, but the property is a town park, but the duck itself belongs to Suffolk County. But it really has become a wonderful, wonderful tradition for the past 20 years of the Christmas lights, and they do this beautiful sort of wreath around the Big Duck. And Santa Claus showed up, long journey from the North Pole, the last leg of the journey. The fire department assisted him. It was cold last night. It was really cold, but it was a warm feeling in the community. Must have been kids. I'd say at least 100 kids who lined
What a
up.
Great turnout. I've never seen so many kids
And,
at that
you know,
event.
I was trying to introduce each kid. I would get their name to Santa, but I had left my gloves in the car. At one point, I just couldn't feel my hands anymore because it was that cold. But a lot of kids got to tell Santa what they're hoping for Christmas. Rick, Councilman Martell was there and got to say some holiday greetings to the crowd. Nadine Greenberg and the choir was there. They were wonderful. I think they sang 5 songs. They sort of take familiar Christmas songs and redo the lyrics with the Big Duck in mind, which is a lot of fun. And of course, I got to tell my Big Duck jokes and a few rotten eggs in there, but for the most part, I think there was some good laughs.
You did it. At one point, I thought Quackerjack was going to knock you off the stage, but
The foul ball.
Yeah, that was one of the. Why didn't Quackerjack go to the Big Ducks, the Long Island Ducks baseball game? Because he heard they were hitting fouls. Boom! I know. So, but it's fun. Quackerjack is the mascot for the Long Island Ducks and is always there. And I think people really had a great time. They put up with my jokes, but we also had Jason Smagan, who is the Parks Commissioner, Richard Martin, who's I think the historic preservation expert for the county. So it was there was other Chief Kiernan was there, and I think a fun time was had by all. So and of course the Flanders Fire Department, who played a very important role there in the event, coming off the tragic loss of their former chief, Brian Williams. But it was a really, really, really nice community event up in Flanders. A lot of participation, and it's a little sad for me because I've been emceeing the event for the past 20 years as a legislator and then as town supervisor. But they said if I want to come back, they might let me. So I might get an honorary spot up on the stage. But it was really, really nice. Okay, so
yeah, there is some
Maybe you
talk
can-
of all your jokes going into a book that will be for sale
at the store, yeah,
Maybe you can be Quackerjack.
exactly.
You can take off your ad at the end.
Exactly. So, All right, so other updates, anybody want to make before we go into executive? Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
Mr. Goni?
Yeah, last night I couldn't be there. We had a youth and government meeting in Hampton Bays. We've got a good contingent of students who are preparing bills to go up to Albany and present them on the floor of our legislature in March. I'm proud of them. Way to go. Also, that program in West Hampton Beach has really taken off. A middle school group went up there in November, and one of their students was elected lieutenant governor for next year. So, way to go there. Also, on December 9th, we are going to be replanting beach grass out on the Tombolo that we know as Foster Memorial Beach, commonly known as Long Beach, from 10 to 12 on December 9th, like I said. And finally, on December 6th, we have public referendums for our 4 ambulance districts. That's Flanders, Northampton, West Hampton, Hampton Bays, and Southampton. The voting location for all 4 of those is at the Hampton Bays, in Hampton Bays at Red Creek Park at the Activity Center. That's the building on the right as you go in, and the polls are open from 2 to 8 p.m. on December 6th. You have to be a registered voter and living in those particular districts. So please come out and vote. And the nature of that vote is to increase the LoSAP payments for our ambulance volunteers from $20 a month to $30 a month.
Right, Rick, yeah.
I was just gonna say that the Heart of the Hamptons is having the polar bear plunge at Cooper's Beach on Saturday, December 9th.
Well, that's a really fun event. Though their moonlight plunge was a little bit easier.
In the summer?
In the summer, yeah. I have done the polar bear plunge. It's, there's a lot braver people, but it's cold. It's cold, but it's a great charity. Heart of the Hamptons does an amazing job. And there's been a lot of events. There's a lot of holiday parties coming, a lot of lightings coming up.
I have to mention, this Saturday at 2 o'clock is the East Quogue Holiday on Main, followed by the tree lighting.
Oh, that's good. And do we know any other tree lighting times? The windmill at the college, is
It's
that,
Friday, I believe.
that's Friday?
Hampton Bays is Saturday around 6.
Okay. I went to the turkey trot in Hampton Bays. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, for the fire department. So, yeah, it was I think they had like 500 runners or something like that.
Next Friday, December 8th, from 5 to 7 at Chancellor's Hall. Is the win.
What day is it?
Next Friday, December 8th, 5 to 7,
5 to 7.
Chancellor's Hall.
December
8th.
8th. 5 to 7 Chancellors. And then obviously the windmill. We have any other times for tree lightings?
I don't have anything else.
Now, we do have another we have more work session, like next week we'll have work session again, so. All right, so we'll keep people posted as we get more of the lightings. All right, so that's it for updates. So for exec, we have personnel matter. And we also have land acquisitions, both CPF and I think CHF as well. So I will make a motion. Is there also confidential legal? Do you have any updates?
Blended with the personnel.
All right, so we'll say those 3 items: confidential legal advice, land acquisition, and personnel. So I'll make a motion to end our work session and go into executive session on those items.
Second?
Second by Councilman Scavone, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned for all other purposes. Do you guys want a few minutes to get a bite, or?
Yeah, it's gonna use the restroom to get a coffee.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind 15 minutes.